This is Dr. Sage, and we're discussing tonight a topic called positive programming. Now in Huna, as I've mentioned plenty of times, we're always looking for what's simple. But some people get mixed up when we say that. You know, we're always looking for the simple way to do things. The simpler, the better. That doesn't mean that the simple way is the only way. This is such an infinite universe that there are many ways to accomplish things. And you can make it real complicated and difficult and still get there, or you can make it real simple. If you are going from Los Angeles, let's say to Palm Springs, not a good trip this time of year, but nevertheless, Los Angeles to Palm Springs, you can go straight Los Angeles to Palm Springs. You can fly. That's the straightest way to go. You might have to use your own plane. I don't think they have a commercial airport, but nevertheless, it's possible to go there straight through the air. You can take the road, which is a little bit more complicated. You could go by way of San Diego. It's possible. It's quite a ways out of your way, but not as far out of your way as if you went by way of New York. You go around the world. In other words, Palm Springs is just a little bit east of LA, but you could go west and get eventually to Palm Springs. And all of these ways are valid ways of getting to Palm Springs from LA. And it would not necessarily be true to say that the shortest way is the best way. Because the shortest way, which is through the air, might, have a lot of complications. It might not be the easy way. It's the simplest, but not necessarily the easiest. You're going to choose the way to go. You're going to choose the way to go by your goal, by what you want to achieve. Okay. One of the simple things that's been presented to people in life as a very simple way of doing things, of having a happy, joyful, productive, prosperous, enlightened, any kind of life that you want, comes in two words, and it's called positive thinking. And oh, has that ever gotten a bad press lately? And one of the reasons it's gotten a bad press, it sounds too simple. And a lot of people automatically reject what sounds simple, especially when we're getting into something that deals with emotions or deals with human progress and development, prosperity, success, health, all of these kinds of things. It can't be that simple, they say. Well, yes, it can, and it is. But here's where the confusion lies. It is definitely not easy. It is not easy at all. Huna is probably one of the simplest systems there is, and one of the most difficult. That's a side of it that people forget. Because it's so simple, you tend to always look for something to complicate it. That's the way we're conditioned. The kind of society we've been brought up for the most part. Or you equate simplicity with being easy. And you start doing it the simple way, and it gets a little difficult, and you say, oh, this can't be right. I'm doing something wrong. Well, no. The fact of the matter is, it's just difficult. So let's look at positive thinking, or as I like to call it now, positive programming. One of the complaints about it that's been made is that it's kind of Pollyanna-ish. I mean, look at the world. Look at all the problems we've got around here. Look at all the problems I've got in me, or that other person over there across the street has. How can how can you be positive? How can you just say, think positive when in the face of all that stuff? You're kidding yourself. It's not real. You're fooling yourself. You're lying. You're doing something. And this is often laid against it. Well, real positive thinking has nothing to do with that kind of Pollyanna attitude, which is used as a Band-Aid. Real positive thinking is not the kind of thing that pretends to be positive on the outside while it's quivering or shaking or fuming on the inside. That's not positive thinking. A lot of people think it is, and so you've got a lot of people walking around with these smiling faces, and they're so nice, and you wonder why you're uncomfortable next to them. Because some kind of vibe is coming out which has got nothing to do with that pretty exterior. And they want to please. They don't want to hurt anybody. They don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to get hurt. They're trying to be nice and make things. They're really probably sincere. But positive thinking is not that. That's not even good acting. Good acting is when you feel the part from the inside. It's just kind of an overlay. It's a surface pretense. That's not positive thinking. And if you think that is, then of course, throw the whole thing out. It doesn't work. It may make a little bit of grease between human relationships, especially superficial ones, acquaintances, things like that. But it doesn't make you feel happier, and it doesn't give you any kind of depth in relationships. Because if you're going to get deep, you're going to really reveal yourself and get known, you got to drop that. And that's scary. Because what if they see what you really like underneath? A lot of people have that fear. What you really like underneath is human. You got to realize that. Now, what is positive thinking? Positive thinking, real positive thinking, is when you take a positive attitude toward whatever happens. Or toward anything, let's say that. 100% positive thinking is when you take a positive attitude toward whatever happens. Now, what does a positive attitude mean? Well, one of the easiest ways, strangely, is to contrast it with a negative attitude. If your thought has anything to do with fear, it isn't positive. If it's jealous, it isn't positive. If it's angry, it isn't positive. And except in special cases, anger can be used positively. But if that anger is coming from a fearful place, it isn't positive. If you're coming from a desire to control in your thinking, whatever you're doing, that's not positive. If you're trying to get one-upmanship, build yourself up at somebody else's expense, that's not positive. If you're coming from a place of thinking of lack, that's not positive. So all kinds of ways we can tell whenever we are being negative in any of those terms, we're not being positive. That's real simple. We are being positive when we think about a situation in some kind of constructive way. Now, in Huna we teach as a basic thing, you create your own reality. You do it whether you want to or not. As long as you're doing it, you might as well do it right. Okay? And do it consciously. Well, positive thinking takes the attitude that, yes, there is always something to do. If you're coming from an idea of helplessness, that's not positive. You say, well, I am helpless. Well, as long as you're saying that, you're not being positive. You look someplace in there for some way in which you can be effective in the slightest degree. You think in terms of doing things successfully, and it doesn't matter what. Give an example of a positive attitude that you can use. It's a lot of fun, and it might make you feel a little strange at first, but when you're walking down the street or driving down the street, every tiny little thing you do that's successful is positive, and you can congratulate yourself. If you've gone a block and stayed in the street without wandering off on the sidewalk, congratulations. You can make a measure of every tiny little thing you do. If you say a complete sentence, that's positive. That's a success. You have completed something. If you can get dressed in the morning, with your clothes on the right way, that's positive. That's a success. If you can put one foot in front of the other each time you do that, great, congratulate yourself. That's successful. And you see, the positive attitude is looking at all these tiny things that we usually ignore and seeing them as successes. And by continually thinking of all these little things that you do as successes, you begin to build in yourself, this is the programming part, you begin to build in yourself a whole sense of being a successful person. Look at all the successful things you do. When you build in the feeling of being successful, the greater and greater you build that up, the more and more successful things you do, you will begin to do out of habit. And that's what you want to get. You want to be able to use this positive programming, this successful feeling and acting so habitually that you go into a situation, even if it's brand new, knowing that each little thing that you do is a success. And they're all going to build up together into a total success. You can go to a party of people where you've never met before, don't know anybody there. You've walked in the door, wow, I accomplished that. Great, that's a success, all right? You've gotten a drink without spilling it, or even if you spilled it, maybe you cleaned it up. Whatever you did it successfully. Maybe you spoke a word to somebody. You successfully completed one word, okay? A sentence, perhaps. You met a new person. You walked around the room. Anything that you do there, you can see and tell yourself and talk to yourself in terms of it being a successful event. That's a positive attitude. The negative one would be looking at all the things that you've done, that all of this thing is being wrong, all the things that you can't do, all the things that might happen, all of that kind of thing is negative. You can tell, you can feel whether what you're thinking or what you're doing. Now, we talked about positive programming. That it differs from positive thinking in that it also includes action. It includes thinking and action. You not only do have positive thoughts, but you perform positive acts. So instead of thinking or doing all of these negative things, what you do is you complete each of these successful acts. And each time you complete a successful act, it reinforces the positive thought behind it, and you just build up and build up and build up. And this can be used in anything. But oh boy, it is not easy to start off in a positive programming. It's not even easy to say. A positive programming way of life. Because you will discover and start to discover how many, many ways you're acting negatively. As I was about to say before, you can tell the difference, you can feel it. Whenever you are thinking or acting in a negative way, there is a sense of tension and either pushing away to avoid something or pulling back. There's a sense of wanting something, where you're trying to pull it toward you, perhaps. Sometimes there may be aches and pains that come immediately upon thinking or acting in a particular way. Well, don't blame the person who's got a cold or the flu, and don't blame the draft, and don't blame something that may have happened 20 years ago or anything else. Whatever you're thinking and acting produces these things right then. Now, sometimes the thoughts and the actions pass by so quickly, we've got the habit of overlooking them. If you start paying attention, you will never have become more conscious in your life until you start a way of living which is positive programming. Because you have to be aware of what you're doing when you're doing it, so that everything you're doing is positive. So that you find yourself beginning to think in a negative way, in one of these uncomfortable feelings associated with it, you immediately stop and change the thought. If you find yourself starting to act, or even in the middle of acting in a negative way, with its uncomfortable feeling, you immediately stop the action and change it to a positive action. Right in the middle. You do not have to go on and continue. A person who has started to eat too much when they've told themselves that they're eating out of fear, or they're eating out of anxiety, or they're smoking too much or something like that they don't want to do. A person who has begun that and is in the middle, got something halfway to their mouth, or got a cigarette half smoked, just to use those two examples, they can stop. There's no cosmic law that says you've got to finish your cigarette, or you have to continue eating whatever you're eating. There's no cosmic law that says that. You're allowed, yes, nobody's told you before, you're allowed to put it down and stop right there and change your action mid-stride. It's okay. Mommy or daddy won't hurt you, okay? And certainly the God or gods, depending on your preference, in heaven aren't going to bother you about it. It's okay. And the more often you can do this, the more often you can catch yourself in the middle of an old habit and stop and perform a positive action or a positive thought, you increase your strength. You increase your strength. And it is possible then, with positive programming, with working toward making all of your thoughts, you hear me? All of them. Working toward, don't forget that part. Working toward making all of your thoughts positive. And all of your actions positive. And be happy, and fruitful, and successful, and productive, and loving, and all the other good things, 100% of the time. It's possible 100% of the time. It takes training, and it takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of being aware. And feeling guilty because you're not positive is not positive. Condemning yourself for not doing it right perfectly the first time or even the second time, that's not positive. In this philosophy, you live now. Your moment of power is now, right now, in this moment, not last moment, this moment. And it doesn't matter what you did in the last moment, any more than it matters what you did 5, 10, 20, 30, 40, some of you weren't even here, 50 years ago. It doesn't matter what you did then. A second ago, it doesn't matter. It's what you do now that means everything. Now, when you begin to work at positive programming, when you start, oh boy, then you find out how negative you really are and what the old negative habits are. Because they'll come rushing up, they'll come like fireworks display, they'll come and say, hey, what are you doing? And they'll try and have their way. We call this sometimes the rubber band effect. Look at these old habits like a rubber band. And when you stretch a rubber band, you stretch it just about to the breaking point, is where the tension is strongest, where it's trying the hardest to get back to its original shape. And with most people, when they're trying to change a habit and they get to this point of great tension, where the old habit is trying to make itself known or keep its momentum, they give up. They stop. They go back. And naturally, it feels better. Like the rubber band relaxing. You haven't gotten rid of the rubber band, but you don't have any tension in it anymore. But you might not like the effects or what it's surrounding. On the other hand, if you keep going and you stretch out past that highest point of tension, the rubber band breaks, snaps, complete release, and you're on your way in a new habit, a new way of living, a new way of feeling and acting. Another way to look at it is, old behavior, mental and physical, emotional behavior, has momentum. There's a law of physics about momentum. An object in motion tends to stay in motion. Object at rest tends to stay at rest. This works just as well for ideas and behavior and habits and things like that. If we take a habit, a particular kind of behavior, let's say some negative behavior, that's moving along in your life with a kind of momentum. It has energy. That energy is in motion because your life is in motion. And you want to change direction. Well, you know what happens when you are driving in a car and you're going around a curve. You feel that force of momentum. That's what you're feeling, inertia, if you like. That's pushing you against the side of the seat. That's the force trying to go in the original direction. Well, it gets real strong right about the sharpest point of the curve. And then when you straighten out, gradually it fades away. And it's gone, and you're all fine and dandy in a new direction. Well, let's suppose that you've got a choice and you're driving along, and you've got this long curve, but there's a road still goes off straight. Maybe it's a bumpy, dirty road, but there's a road there around this curve. Now you can either go straight or you can go around the curve in the new direction, off to this great, wonderful, great city, new world way of being. Or you can go on that lousy old bumpy road. Now is that set up? Okay. When you're going around that corner and you start to feel the pressure of momentum pushing against the side of the car, really wanting you to keep going in the original direction, two ways to get rid of that feeling. You can turn the wheel again and go off on that bumpy road, and that pressure will be released. Or you can keep turning the corner and go through that feeling of pressure, and it'll fade out and disappear. All right, well, this is what happens when you begin to change habits and behavior into this positive programming mode. The same kind of thing happens. When you first begin to change, it feels like there's tremendous pressure to keep doing in the old way. And there is. It's momentum, it's inertia. But if you continue in that new way, it fades out. And depends on how different you want, how sharp the turn, how different the direction that you want to make from where you've been going. That is going to affect the strength of the resistance of the change. But that resistance is a very natural thing. It's only an energy effect. It doesn't mean you're bad or you can't do it, or worst of all, that you weren't meant to, that you shouldn't change. A lot of people use that excuse. Doesn't mean that at all. It is only an energy effect. And if you continue in the new direction, you'll have all of that pressure relieved. But sometimes it isn't easy. Sometimes it isn't easy at all. So with positive programming, thinking and action, both. And when your feelings come up, your feelings will come up. And sometimes you feel very uncomfortable, and sometimes you feel very unsettled, and sometimes you'll feel negative about the positive. That'll happen too. But an important thing to know about your feelings, they're lousy guides to behavior or decisions. Feelings just exist. They are themselves. Feelings don't have any meaning. I mean, what does momentum mean? What does gravity mean? What does electricity mean? They don't mean anything. They are. Feelings are energy flows, and they're exactly the same thing. And your feeling comes from your thinking and or your behavior. Not the other way around. When you act because of your feelings, then you reinforce them, and you reinforce the thinking. But actually, the feeling is generated by your behavior. If you want to feel really great, then stand up great, you know. Square your shoulders off and walk off with a brisk step, you know, and swing your arms. You'll feel tremendous in no time. Because feelings follow behavior. You want to feel great? Then sit down for a few moments and think only beautiful thoughts. You can make those beautiful memories if you want to, or you can make those beautiful things in the environment that you look at, pay attention to. You can create beautiful thoughts. You'll start to feel wonderful. Because feelings follow thoughts. And so when you get a negative feeling, it doesn't mean anything except that you've been thinking a negative thought, or you've been performing some negative behavior. That's all it means. It's just an automatic response. And you'll get that kind of thing. You start working on this positive program. You'll be programming, when you're doing this, you'll be programming yourself, of course, and it's through programming yourself that you'll have all the good effects in your life. When you are thinking positive 100% of the time, always put it this way, when you're thinking positive 50% of the time and acting positive 50% of the time, 50% of your life will be positive. That's right. Follows an exact law, exact mirror. If you can think of, you look at your life right now, and you say, you know, really, I don't have very many problems. I've got a few that really bug me, but all told, most of my life is okay. I mean, the days pass, and it's great. I just got these few things happen once in a while. Tremendous. You might have 75, 80, 90% positive thinking. Positive programming already. Congratulate yourself on it. And you got a clear sailing, you know. You got, what, only 10% more to go, or whatever it happens to be. If you look at your life and you can figure out, hey, this seems to be about 80% negative, we got to do something here. There are people like that. But that kind of life only comes about because of the way they think and the way they act. Now, yes, some people will ask, well, what about karma? What about things that we've done in past lives? How does that affect, you know, doesn't that determine what's going to happen to us here? Not at all. Not at all. It does not, get this word, determine anything. It provides grist for the mill, you know, opportunities for things to work through, but it's your thinking and acting here that determines what effect any other life or any other situation will have. It is your thinking and acting here. You do not have to go through any kind of negative experience. That is not required. Suffering is not part of the curriculum. That's your own stuff. It doesn't matter what you did in another life, existence, anything like that. Here is the time to think and act in a positive way. And if something before was negative, then thinking and acting in a positive way now is the only way you're going to clear it up. Not by going through negative suffering. That doesn't do anything except program you for more negative suffering. Positive programming. The possibilities are stupendous. You have the opportunity to be happy, prosperous, loving, productive, exciting, everything you want, 100% of the time. All your thoughts and actions are positive. 100% of your life will also be positive. Aloha.